The rich humiliated a nun at a wedding, but when she said 3 words everyone was shocked. In the heart of the opulent city of New Haven, where skyscrapers rivaled the clouds and money flowed like rivers of gold, stood the imposing Cathedral of St. Rose. It was a sunny spring day, and the ringing of bells announced the most anticipated wedding of the year. The union between Alexander Morgan, heir to the Morgan Hotel empire, and Victoria Foster, daughter of oil tycoon Robert Foster. The cathedral was adorned with thousands of white roses and silk ribbons, creating a fairy tale atmosphere. Guests, dressed in their finest attire, began arriving in luxurious cars and limousines. Among them were powerful families, influential politicians, and renowned celebrities. Amidst this display of wealth and ostentation, a humble and simple figure moved discreetly between the church pews. Sister Mary Grace, a young nun of just 28 years old, had been assigned to help with the final preparations for the ceremony. Her gray habit contrasted notably with the designer dresses and tailored suits that surrounded her. As Sister Mary carefully placed the missals on each pew, she couldn't help but feel a pang of nostalgia. Just 5 years ago, she herself had been part of this world of luxury and privilege. However, an unexpected turn of fate had led her to find her true calling in service to God and others. Suddenly, a murmur of excitement swept through the church. Alexander Morgan had just arrived looking impeccable in his designer tuxedo. His arrogant bearing and dazzling smile caught the attention of all present. Behind him, his mother, Sophia Morgan, an elegant woman with a severe appearance, observed everything with a critical eye. Sophia approached Sister Mary, who was arranging some flower vases near the altar. With a haughty voice and without even looking at her directly, she ordered, "You nun, make sure everything is perfect. I don't want to see a single flower out of place, understood?" Sister Mary nodded humbly. "Of course, Mrs. Morgan. I'll do everything possible to make the ceremony beautiful." Sophia looked her up and down with disdain. "I hope so. And please, stay away from the guests. We don't want your appearance to make them uncomfortable." Sophia's words were like a slap to Sister Mary, but she maintained her composure and continued with her tasks in silence. Little did she know that this was just the beginning of a series of humiliations she would have to endure throughout the day. As the church filled, the tension in the air was palpable. Victoria had not yet arrived, and whispers of concern began to spread among the guests. Alexander consulted his watch impatiently every few minutes, while Sophia tried to maintain a facade of calm. Finally, after an hour's delay, the roar of a sports car announced the bride's arrival. Victoria Foster made her triumphant entrance clad in a wedding dress that seemed straight out of a fairy tale. Her beauty was undeniable, but there was something in her gaze that denoted nervousness and doubt. The ceremony began with all the pomp and circumstance expected of an event of such magnitude. The bishop, a personal friend of the Morgan family, officiated the wedding with solemnity. However, just as he was about to declare Alexander and Victoria husband and wife, a trembling voice rose from the back of the church. "Wait! I can't do it!" All the guests turned in surprise to see Victoria, with tears in her eyes, taking a step back from the altar. "I'm sorry, Alexander, but I can't marry you. I don't love you." A sepulchral silence fell over the congregation. Alexander, visibly furious, grabbed Victoria's arm. "What are you saying? You can't do this to me." Sister Mary, who had been observing the scene from a corner, felt the need to intervene. She approached the altar discreetly and said in a soft but firm voice, "Please, Mr. Morgan, release Miss Foster. She has the right to express her feelings." Sophia Morgan, who until that moment had been paralyzed by shock, turned to Sister Mary with fury in her eyes. "How dare you interfere? This is none of your business, you meddlesome nun." The situation quickly escalated. Guests began to murmur, some taking Victoria's side, others outraged by the scandal. Amidst the chaos, Robert Foster, Victoria's father, approached the altar to defend his daughter. "Alexander, let go of my daughter right now," Robert demanded with an authoritative voice. Alexander, still furious but aware of the consequences of his actions, released Victoria. The bride, sobbing, ran into her father's arms. Sophia, determined to save face, addressed the guests with a forced smile. "Dear friends, it seems there has been a small misunderstanding. We apologize for this inconvenience. Please join us at the reception while we resolve this setback." As the guests left the church amid murmurs and speculations, Sister Mary approached Victoria to offer comfort. However, before she could reach her, Sophia intercepted her. "You," Sophia hissed with venom in her voice. "You're to blame for this. Your meddling has ruined my son's wedding. I'll make sure you never set foot in this church again." Sister Mary, hurt by the unjust accusations but determined to maintain her dignity, responded calmly. "Mrs. Morgan, my only intention was to help. As a servant of God, it is my duty to protect those in need." Sophia let out a contemptuous laugh. "Servant of God, don't make me laugh. You're just a nobody hiding behind a habit. What do you know about the real world, about the responsibilities that come with being part of high society?" It was at that moment that Sister Mary felt something inside her break. Years of self-imposed secrets and silences weighed on her. With a trembling but determined voice, she uttered 3 words that would change the course of events. "Grace Emily Williams." Sophia paled upon hearing that name. What did you say?" "Grace Emily Williams," repeated Sister Mary more firmly. "That's my full name. I am the daughter of Edward Williams." The name fell like a bomb in the church. Edward Williams was known throughout the country as the Midas King of business, a man whose influence and fortune rivaled those of the Morgans and Fosters combined. His mysterious daughter, who had disappeared from public life years ago, was the subject of countless rumors and speculations. Sophia, recovering from the initial surprise, narrowed her eyes with suspicion. "You're lying. It's impossible for Edward Williams' daughter to be a simple nun." "I'm not lying, Mrs. Morgan," Sister Mary responded serenely. 5 years ago, I decided to dedicate my life to God and to helping others. My father respected my decision, although the outside world never knew the truth. Alexander, who had been listening to the conversation, approached with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. "If you are who you say you are, why reveal your identity now? What do you gain from this?" Sister Mary looked Alexander directly in the eyes. "I'm not looking to gain anything. I just wanted you to understand that appearances can be deceiving and that a person's worth is not measured by their wealth or social position." Despite the revelation, Sophia refused to believe Sister Mary's words. With renewed disdain she spat, "This is ridiculous. I won't allow an impostor to ruin our family name. Guards, escort this woman out of the church and make sure she doesn't bother us again." 2 burly men approached Sister Mary, ready to forcefully remove her. However, a powerful voice resonated from the church entrance. "Stop immediately." Everyone turned to see a tall, distinguished man advancing down the central aisle. It was Edward Williams in person, his imposing presence filling the space. "Father," whispered Sister Mary, a mixture of surprise and relief in her voice. Edward approached his daughter and hugged her tenderly before facing the Morgans. "Sophia Alexander, I am deeply disappointed to see how you treat my daughter. Grace has always been and will always be my greatest pride, regardless of the path she has chosen in life." Sophia, realizing the magnitude of her error, tried to backpedal. "Edward, dear friend, there has been a terrible misunderstanding. Of course, we had no idea this charming young woman was your daughter. Allow us to apologize." But Edward raised a hand, silencing her. "Apologies are not enough, Sophia. I have witnessed how you have treated my daughter not just today, but throughout the time she has served in this church. Your behavior is unacceptable." Alexander, seeing how the situation was slipping out of their hands, tried to intervene. "Mr. Williams, I assure you this is just a misunderstanding. Our families have done business together for years. Surely we can resolve this amicably." Edward looked at Alexander coldly. "Business and friendship are very different things, young Morgan, and you have proven unworthy of either." Turning to his daughter, Edward asked gently, "Grace, are you all right? Do you want to press charges against them for their treatment?" Sister Mary shook her head. "No, Father, as I have told you many times, I've chosen a path of forgiveness and understanding, but I do believe it's time for me to leave this parish. There are many other places where I can serve God and those in need." Edward nodded with pride. "As always, your heart is bigger than all of ours combined. Come, I'll take you to the convent to collect your things." As Sister Mary and her father prepared to leave, Victoria Foster, who had been observing the entire scene in silence, approached them. "Sister Mary," she said with a trembling voice, "I want to thank you for your intervention. It gave me the courage to be honest with my feelings. Could I talk to you in private before you leave?" Sister Mary smiled warmly. "Of course, Victoria, I'd be happy to listen to you." As Sister Mary and Victoria moved away to talk, Edward turned one last time to the Morgans. "As for you, consider our business relationship terminated. My lawyers will be in touch to finalize all our pending agreements." Sophia's face turned pale at the implications of those words. Business with Edward Williams represented a substantial part of the Morgan Empire's income. Without it, the future of the company suddenly looked uncertain. Alexander, realizing the gravity of the situation, made one last desperate effort. "Mr. Williams, please reconsider your decision. We're willing to do whatever is necessary to make amends for our mistakes." But Edward was already walking away, leaving the Morgans mired in a sepulchral silence, aware that their world was about to change forever. Meanwhile, in a quiet corner of the church, Sister Mary listened attentively to Victoria. "I've always felt that my life was predetermined," Victoria confessed through tears. "Marrying Alexander, continuing with the family business, but deep down I know that's not my path. Seeing your dedication and strength, Sister Mary, has made me realize that I want something more in my life. I want to make a difference like you do." Sister Mary took Victoria's hands in hers. "Victoria, it's never too late to find your true path. Life is a journey of self-discovery, and today you've taken the first step by being honest with yourself and others. I'm proud of you. Do you think you could teach me? Show me how I can help others?" Victoria asked, hope in her eyes. "Of course," Sister Mary responded with a warm smile. "If you really want to explore this path, I'd be happy to guide you. But remember, you don't have to become a nun to do good. There are many ways to serve others and find your purpose in life." Victoria nodded, a new light shining in her eyes. "Thank you, Sister Mary. For the first time in a long time I feel like I have real options." Meanwhile, at the other end of the church, the Morgans were trying to process the dramatic turn events had taken. Sophia, still in shock, collapsed onto one of the church pews. "This can't be happening," she muttered more to herself than to others. "Our entire empire, everything we've built." Alexander, for his part, seemed to be going through different stages of denial and anger. "This is absurd. How can a simple nun have so much power? There must be some way to reverse this." Robert Foster, who had remained silent observing the entire situation, approached the Morgans with a serious expression on his face. "Sophia, Alexander," he began, his voice laden with gravity. "I think it's time we have a serious conversation about the future of our companies." Sophia looked up, a spark of hope in her eyes. "Robert, old friend, surely you understand that all of this has been a terrible misunderstanding. You can't abandon us at this moment." Robert sighed deeply. "I'm sorry, Sophia, but I can't ignore what I've witnessed today. The way you've treated Sister Mary Grace Williams is unforgivable. And the way you've handled this entire situation makes me seriously question whether I want to continue being associated with you." Alexander, feeling control slipping from his hands, tried to intervene. "Mr. Foster, please don't make hasty decisions. Think about all the years of collaboration between our families. It's precisely because of those years that it pains me so much to see what you've become," Robert responded with sadness. "You've lost sight of what really matters. Integrity, compassion, respect for others. My daughter had the courage to follow her heart today, and I'm proud of her for that. Maybe it's time I make some difficult decisions too." With these words, Robert walked away, leaving the Morgans even more devastated. The reality of their situation began to sink in. Not only had they lost the alliance with the Williams, but now the Fosters were also reconsidering their association. Meanwhile, Sister Mary and Victoria had finished their conversation. Edward approached them, an expression of paternal pride on his face. "Grace dear, are you ready to leave?" he asked gently. Sister Mary nodded, but before departing she turned to Victoria. "Remember, Victoria, the path of service and compassion is not always easy, but it's infinitely rewarding. If you really want to explore this path, I'll be happy to help you in any way I can." Victoria hugged Sister Mary tightly. "Thank you for everything. I promise I'll make good use of this second chance." As Sister Mary and her father prepared to leave the church, they found themselves face to face with the Morgans. For a moment, silence filled the space between them, charged with unspoken emotions and belated regrets. Finally it was Sophia who spoke, her voice devoid of its usual arrogance. "Sister Mary Grace we." She stuttered, the words seeming to catch in her throat. Sister Mary looked at her with compassion. "Mrs. Morgan, words are not necessary at this moment. Sometimes silence gives us the opportunity to reflect and grow. I wish you the best." With these words, Sister Mary and Edward left the church, leaving behind an atmosphere of introspection and imminent change. In the days and weeks that followed, the events of that fateful wedding had repercussions that extended far beyond the families directly involved. As announced, Edward Williams cut all business ties with the Morgans. The news spread quickly through business circles, and soon other partners and clients began to distance themselves from the once powerful Morgan empire. Robert Foster, true to his words, also decided to end his association with the Morgans. But he went further. Inspired by Sister Mary's example and his own daughter's courage, he began to reorient his businesses towards more ethical and sustainable projects. Victoria, for her part, embarked on a journey of self-discovery. She began volunteering at various charitable organizations, finding a satisfaction she had never before experienced in her life of luxury and privilege. Meanwhile, Sister Mary returned to her life of service, but now in a different convent, far from the opulence and intrigues of high society. Her story, however, became an urban legend, a reminder that true nobility comes not from money or status, but from actions and heart. The Morgans, stripped of much of their influence and wealth, were forced to reevaluate their lives and priorities. Alexander, in particular, went through a period of deep introspection. The public humiliation and loss of his status led him to question everything he had once believed important. One day, several months after the failed wedding, Alexander found himself at the gates of the convent where Sister Mary now resided. With a racing heart and trembling hands, he asked to speak with her. When Sister Mary appeared, Alexander could barely contain his surprise. Despite her simple habit and absence of makeup, she radiated a beauty and serenity he had never noticed before. "Sister Mary," Alexander began, his voice laden with emotion. "I've come to ask for your forgiveness, not just for how I treated you that day, but for a lifetime of arrogance and contempt towards others. Your actions, your strength, have made me realize how empty my existence has been until now." Sister Mary listened attentively, her face reflecting a mixture of compassion and caution. "Alexander, repentance is the first step towards change, but words must be accompanied by actions. What do you plan to do to make amends for your mistakes?" Alexander took a deep breath before responding. "I've been thinking a lot about it. I want to use what's left of my family's fortune to do good. I've been researching community development projects, education programs for underprivileged children. I want to make a real difference in people's lives." A small smile played on Sister Mary's lips. "Those are noble intentions, Alexander. But remember, the path of redemption is neither easy nor quick. It will require patience, humility, and constant commitment." "I know," Alexander nodded, "and I'm prepared for it. For the first time in my life I feel like I have a real purpose. And well, I was wondering if you would be willing to guide me on this new path." Sister Mary looked at him thoughtfully for a moment before responding. "Alexander, I can't be your personal guide on this journey. Each person must find their own path to redemption. However, I can offer you advice and support when you need it. And perhaps over time, we can work together on projects that benefit the community." Alexander nodded, a mixture of gratitude and determination in his eyes. "Thank you, Sister Mary. It's more than I deserve. I promise I won't disappoint you." As Alexander walked away from the convent, he felt as if an enormous weight had been lifted from his shoulders. For the first time in his life, he saw a future full of possibilities and purpose. In the years that followed, the city of New Haven experienced significant changes. The once all-powerful Morgan Empire transformed into a foundation dedicated to social and educational projects. Alexander, working tirelessly to redeem his family name, became a respected figure in philanthropic circles. Victoria Foster, inspired by Sister Mary's example, established a non-profit organization dedicated to empowering young women from disadvantaged communities. Her work led her to travel throughout the country, sharing her story and motivating others to find their true calling. Robert Foster, for his part, became a leader in the field of ethical and sustainable business. His example inspired other magnates to reconsider their business practices, generating a gradual but significant change in the city's business culture. Edward Williams, proud of the impact his daughter had had on so many lives, decided to establish a foundation in her name. The Grace Williams Foundation was dedicated to promoting education and community service, quickly becoming one of the most respected charitable organizations in the country. As for Sister Mary, she continued her work in the convent, oblivious to the fame and recognition her story had generated. For her, the true reward was in the small acts of kindness and compassion she could perform each day. One day, several years after that fateful wedding, Sister Mary received an unexpected visit. Sophia Morgan, visibly aged and humbled by the events of recent years, presented herself at the convent. "Grace." "Sister Mary," Sophia began, her voice trembling slightly. "I've come to ask for your forgiveness. It's taken me a long time to understand the magnitude of my mistakes and the cruelty of my actions." Sister Mary looked at her with compassion. "Mrs. Morgan, forgiveness is a gift we give to ourselves as much as to others. I'm glad you've found the courage to seek it." Sophia, with tears in her eyes, continued. "I've seen how your example has changed not only my son, but our entire community. It's made me realize how wrong I was about so many things. I'd like to know if there's anything I can do to make amends for my mistakes." Sister Mary took Sophia's hands in hers. "It's never too late to change, Mrs. Morgan. True repentance is demonstrated through actions. Perhaps you could consider joining some of the community projects your son has initiated. Sometimes the best path to redemption is helping others find theirs." Sophia nodded, a small smile of gratitude lighting up her tired face. "Thank you, Sister Mary. Your kindness and wisdom are truly inspiring. I promise I'll do everything possible to be worthy of this forgiveness." As Sophia walked away, Sister Mary reflected on the incredible journey her life had been, from privileged daughter to humble nun, from anonymous figure to catalyst for change. Every step, every challenge had led her to this moment. In the silence of the convent, Sister Mary raised a prayer of gratitude for the lives she had touched, for the lessons learned, and for the opportunity to be an instrument of love and compassion in a world that so desperately needed it. And so, in a city transformed by the power of forgiveness and redemption, the story that began with a failed wedding continued to be written in the hearts and actions of all those whose lives had been touched by a humble nun named Grace Emily Williams.